Cinnamon, roasted nuts, and fresh sourdough bread. A small folding table stood alone. A simple white sign on it read, "Homemade cookies, raising money for my chemo." Behind the table sat 12-year-old Madison, selling her cookies with all the courage she could muster despite her small frame. There was a hint of exhaustion beneath her eyes, but she wasn't complaining. She had spent the night baking cookies with her mom, rolling dough with her tired hands, and carefully packing each one, with love. Every cookie was a symbol of her hard work, and she was fighting through any challenge to raise money for her chemotherapy. Boy tugged at his father's hand, pointing to the cookies, but the man just shook his head, distracted by his phone. Teenage girl paused for a second but moved on, her hands full of shopping bags. Madison didn't blame them, they didn't know her, and they didn't owe her anything. But as the hours passed and the crowd began to thin, frustration started to build in her chest. She clenched her fists under the table, her body aching as the familiar fatigue settled into her bones. She had spent so much time fighting her illness, against all the odds, and now she was fighting to make something else matter. A woman stopped, her eyes flicking between Madison and the sign. She hesitated, then leaned in and whispered, "Where are your parents?" Madison froze. "I'm here by myself." The woman frowned, shifting uncomfortably. "Well, maybe someone should be helping you. You shouldn't have to be out here." And then she walked away. Madison stared at the ground, her jaw tightening. She knew she shouldn't have to be here, but what choice did she have? Shift in the energy around her. The market had started to slow down. Vendors were packing up their unsold goods. Tired parents were coaxing their kids toward the parking lot, and the golden afternoon light stretched long shadows across the pavement. Madison counted the bills in her cash box again, willing the number to change. It didn't. 18. She swallowed hard, trying to push. And then, as if drawn by the unspoken gravity of the moment, he stopped right in front of her table. For what felt like an eternity, Madison couldn't breathe. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, his hands in his pockets, his eyes moving over her table, the cookies, the cash box, the sign. His gaze lingered on the words, "Homemade cookies, raising money for my chemo." Madison didn't move. She wasn't sure she even could. The world had shrunk to just this single moment, just her. Words that had felt so personal just moments ago. Then he reached into his pocket, and the crowd leaned in, waiting. Her heart pounded, caught somewhere between hope and disbelief. Was he about to buy a cookie, say something, offer a kind word? Whatever it was, she knew one thing for sure. This moment was about to change everything. Clint Eastwood pulled out his wallet, and the weight of the moment pressed down on her. A strange mix of excitement, disbelief, and something deeper, unspoken. The crowd erupted. People who had been frozen just moments ago suddenly sprang into action. Some gasped, others clapped, and a few even whistled, their excitement bubbling over. Someone in the back shouted, "Did that really just happen?" Madison, still stunned, could barely hear them. Her eyes were locked on the stack of bills sitting in her cash box, more money than she had ever seen in her life. She looked back up at Clint Eastwood, her hands shaking slightly. I don't even know what to say," she whispered. He held her gaze for a moment, then simply said, "Just keep fighting." Without another word, he turned and walked away. Madison sat there motionless as the whispers and murmurs around her grew louder. Then something unexpected happened. A man stepped forward, pulling out his wallet. He grabbed a bag of cookies and placed a $100 bill into the cash box. "I'll take one," he said, "and keep the change." Then another person and another. It was like a floodgate had opened. One by one, strangers came forward, each dropping money into the box, 20s, 50s, even more hundreds. But today everything felt different. Bill. He didn't even take a bag of cookies. "I lost my wife to cancer," he said gently. "I wish I could have done more for her. But today, I can do something for you." Madison pressed the bill between her fingers, her throat tightening. She didn't know how to say thank you in a way that could possibly match what she was feeling. So instead, she met his eyes and said, I won't stop fighting. A small smile crossed his face. That's all any of us can do. As the market began to empty, Madison sat there, hands resting on the table, trying to absorb what had just happened. And then, for the first time in months, she let herself laugh, a real, honest laugh, the kind she hadn't heard from herself since before the hospital rooms, the IV drips, the late-night cries her mother thought she didn't. Here. She had come here hoping to make a small difference. She never imagined she'd leave knowing she had been given something even greater. In a world that often feels cold, indifferent, and unfair, moments like these remind us of something important. Kindness is still alive. A single person, one moment of generosity, can start a ripple effect that changes lives. Clint Eastwood didn't have to stop. He didn't have to give, but he did. And because of that, so did everyone else. So the next time you see someone fighting their battle alone, ask yourself, what can I do? How can I help? Because sometimes all it takes